Getting a yellow or red card in football can be for any number of reasons. A mistimed challenge, jumping into the crowd after scoring a crucial goal, or shoving the referee for absolutely no reason. Still very much not over that. Point is, I don't think that should be the end of it. I reckon if you get a card, that should be your last game for the club. Now, last month, you'll remember I released a video in which if a player scored, they were immediately released from their contract. It was a mess. In the best way. Teams were losing their entire front lines. Things became very low-scoring affairs, needless to say. I'll link it in the description if you haven't already seen it. But in the midst of that came the idea that would affect teams at the opposite end of the pitch, and that was a simple one. If a player was to get a yellow or a red card, they were immediately released from their contract. Would this lead to a golden era of scoring, simply because teams didn't have any defenses anymore? Now, just like last time, teams will be able to replenish their squads in the transfer window, and when players are released, they will be able to be picked up by other clubs in the league as well. But that can only happen once due to the squad rules. So as the season wears on, things are going to get very feisty. I'm really excited about this one. I'll be using a screenflow that stops the game after every single Premier League match day. I can then go into each game, look through the cards, and release any players that have been booked or red carded during the matches. It's definitely going to be way more time consuming than the last one that we did, but it's just going to be so much more fun, I think. But first, I'd never normally do this, but at the start of FN23, I set myself the goal of trying to get 50,000 subs on YouTube by the end of the cycle. And we are dangerously close to being on track for that at the moment, which is genuinely a surprise. So thank you very much for that. But if you aren't already, do consider subscribing for more absolute nonsense. I know in the last video I tried to maintain the veneer that it was an experiment by having some kind of comparison at the end. Does anyone really care about that? We're just here for the chaos, aren't we? The first game in the Premier League is Manchester United versus Everton on the Friday. Let's get to that. Let's see what happens so you can get an idea of how this flow is going to work. Obviously, I'll be using the editor to remove those players. Same kind of gist, but it's going to be a slightly different workflow. So let's go and find out how it works. So there we go. A 2-1 victory for Manchester United. And would you believe it? Wout Weghorst has scored for them. You'd love to see it. Right, let's just see if there's any bookings, though, because that's what actually matters. So each day and each game, I'm just going to click on the match, go into the game, and see who's getting released. Oh, dear. It'll only affect the defenders, he said. It's not gone too well for them there. Weghorst is gone, and so is Lisandro Martinez with a card there, but also Seamus Coleman and Mason Holgate. So that's 3 defenders gone, and this is what I mean. The defenses are going to get weaker, and in theory, the attacks are going to stay relatively high quality, which means I think as the season wears on, we could start to see some absolutely unbelievable score lines in the Premier League, as well as I wouldn't be surprised if a team scores over 100 goals this season, and a team probably concedes close to 100 too, let's be honest. And if a player is on loan, then they'll of course be terminated from their loan and not their full contract at that original team. However, if they've got one of those loans with the option where it's mandatory and they're joining in January or something, then we'll cancel both. Well, Andy Robertson wasn't even hanging about here. He's just decided to go straight for the red. I mean, fair play. But they also lose Fabinho in that same process. Spurs lose Bentancur and Romero there. Obviously, I'm not going to show you every single match. That would be ridiculous. We'll check in on the league standings and stuff sort of on a monthly basis. Hey, Leeds are the first team to get through a match without losing a player. They lost the match, but they didn't lose a player. But Arsenal do lose both Saliba and Gabriel. So City win 3-0 away from home, but they do lose both John Stones and Ruben Diaz in this game. That's not ideal. Whereas West Ham only lose Thilo Kehrer. Though it is worth pointing out that West Ham didn't have a single shot in this game. That will change as the season goes on, I suspect. The other thing I'm also expecting is that as teams have to bring in worse players into the squad, they're probably going to be more likely to get booked in several ways because they're going to be not as good as the players around them. So that actually might accelerate the snowball effect potentially. City have just lost Kevin De Bruyne. Liverpool also lose Naby Keita. They've also got Van Dijk injured, which is just totally separate to this. So Lisandro Martinez, I think, is the first player to be booked twice and for different sides and has already done for the season. He's done his time at Manchester United, 3rd game in, booked for Arsenal as well, gone. Liverpool are a team I genuinely worry about because they seem to score a lot of goals and they've done fine to start with, but they do love getting 2-3 bookings per game, and I feel like that's going to come back on them at some point because they've just lost Arthur, Trent, and Thiago in this one. Villa have just had one hell of a game here. They've actually only got 3 yellows in here. It's the 4 red injuries that Villa have suffered in this match that more concerns me. I've not touched anything to do with injuries in this game. United just lost Casemiro, Fernandes, and Varane. Also, surprisingly, it's taken till match day 3 for Mitrovic to get his yellow card. Genuinely a surprise. Pelini has not even been booked yet for Fulham. What is this? Absolutely unrealistic. In a very rare situation, Chelsea's goalkeeper just got booked on the 0th minute. What? Oh, that's not correct. Yeah, he got booked on the 27th. Rarely ever see goalkeepers get booked in FM, but Mendy's found a way. There we go. It's taken till, I think, match day 5, actually, for João Palhinha to finally get his booking, and that was the one I had nailed on. So now that we've reached the end of August, we're 5 matches into the season, and you can see a weird one. The usual suspect, I mean, Fulham and Brentford really struggling. No wins for either of them, nor Villa down there too. Most of the teams you'd expect to be are where they are. The Man United top, actually, is quite surprising at this point, but Southampton, with 4 wins on the bounce they had to start the season. Man United, actually, surprisingly, have got 10 yellow cards so far, and have actually top of the league whilst losing 10 players thus far. No reds for them. Fulham with 9. That would explain their, well, one of the reasons that would put them down towards the bottom. But Southampton, bottom of the list. 2 yellow cards and no reds. If they carry on at that kind of pace this season, I think there's a very strong chance that they could end up winning the Premier League, or certainly being up there. But Chelsea and Spurs, of the sort of more established larger sides, down there on 4 themselves, that could certainly help them make a charge for the title themselves. These are the types of games that fill my heart with joy. So Brighton have lost Dalot, Colwill, but Everton have lost Leon Bailey, Mikalenko, Jorge de Frutos, and Nathan Paz. You just had 3 straight games here, all in a row with not a single booking. It's like the AI is learning somehow. I don't think that's the case. Obviously it's not. It's just really weird to see 3 straight matches in a row like that without a single booking in them. So September is now firmly out of the way. United have now taken their lead. Well, they're still at the top of the league. Southampton have slowly fallen off a little bit, and the usual suspects are now creeping back towards where you'd expect them to be, really. You've got the sort of... Actually, who are we missing? And Newcastle sort of struggled a little bit, to be fair. They're sort of mid-table here. Brentford still bottom and winless. Everton also winless, but notably have drawn 6 of their 8 matches so far. They can't win, but they sure can draw. So Everton sit top on 14, and they are struggling with that. Man United, though, 14 red yellow cards. They have simmered down a little bit now, but they're top of the league still. They're making it work. I just don't think it can go on forever. At some point, they are going to have to fall away. When you look at the other teams around them, you know, Bournemouth are 11th, but then there's Fulham and Brighton and Wolves in there. City quite high up. As towards the bottom, Southampton still sit bottom of the league on this, which is really, really key, and I think it's part of the reason they're having the success that they are. Well, Arsenal weren't hanging about at all, were they? Joachim Andersen, Tierney's gone, Partey's gone. Oh, lordy lord, Forest. Oh god, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Technically that's only 4, but it's a lot for Forest there, and it's another win for Southampton too. Oh dear, Everton. They've just lost Yerry Mina, Derry John Merkin, what a name that is, Dwight McNeil, Eli Campbell, and Einar Iversen. Is that 5 players lost in 1 game? I don't think Everton have won a match yet. I think Brentford have just won their very first game of the season, and West Ham have just taken 4 bookings in that game. It seems to me that it's especially affecting fullbacks. Now, I don't know if fullbacks, just generally speaking, get booked more than centre-backs, but it feels like teams are losing a lot of fullbacks. Speaking of, there goes Ryan Fredericks. Ooh, Everton become the 2nd team this season to lose a goalkeeper, as Pickford is now gone. It's now the end of October, and we're 14 games into the season for, in fact, every single team, and you can see not Leicester City, Everton still haven't won a match. 8 draws, admittedly, but no wins in their first 14 games of the season. And the goal differences aren't even that bad on some of these teams. They're just not particularly good either. A lot of teams with just 1 or 2 wins over that period. In fact, Bournemouth with only 3 wins in 14, but they have only lost twice, remarkably. They just seem to hang on in there somehow, despite surely being quite high up on the cards thing. Southampton's still hanging on in there. 6th spot, doing a decent job. They're right in the battle, at least for 2nd at the moment. Liverpool now have a 7-point lead in the title race, because I think they have just kind of been mid-table as far as bookings go, and that's really, really helped them. They don't seem to have lost any key players in truly important areas. The scoring isn't exactly off the charts just yet, but I do expect that it will accelerate dramatically in the second half of the season. I think that's when it will really start to pop off. Hopefully? I really hope it does. It'd be weird if it didn't. As for yellow cards, I mean, Everton, 23 yellows, bottom of the league, makes total sense. Forest now on 22. Villa, surprisingly, with 20 up in 7th. United still doing okay in there. It's Liverpool down in 17th here with only 10. That's making a massive difference to their title charge at the moment. I think it has to be said. Palace as well, top half with only 9. And Southampton, just 7 bookings this season, is what's keeping them up in 6th spot. Big news is that Saints just lost, but more importantly, they just lost Bednarek and Salisu in the same game, and that could affect them really badly, as that's both of their centre-backs gone. So the January catch-up looks as following. Liverpool actually continue to extend their lead at the top, and I think that's mostly come at the expense of people like Manchester United, who are just starting to slide down the league a little bit. They're still, you know, well in the battle for 2nd, as are Southampton, sticking on in there. Only 3 points off of 2nd themselves. They just keep picking up points. Everton, 8 draws, 10 losses, no wins. It took them 14 matches of this to sack Dyche, by the way. They've only just sacked him. So it's not looking good for them right now. They're 7 points from safety and are going to need a miracle to stay up. At this rate, they're going to need a miracle to win a game. As for yellow cards, I mean, Forest up there on 25 now with 2 reds. Villa, still though, 24 and 2 reds. Still 9th. Everton in there with 24. United have only got 22 at the moment, so they are actually still hanging on in there. Southampton, though, still at the very bottom with 11, but Liverpool now have really tidied themselves up. They've only got 11 bookings themselves, and I think that's what's going to see them home this year. Spurs and Chelsea and City are just doing okay, but they're creeping away, and I think Liverpool have got this in the bag. Also, Arsenal have got 4 red cards. They only have 19 yellows, but those 4 reds might actually be what costs them Champions League football as well. West Ham have just lost a regen left-back in January. I assume that basically because we have add players to playable teams set on, there might have been a gap in their youth in like their under-19 squad or something at the start of the season. And as a result, Nicky Murner has been thrown up. But now, yeah, he's the first regen to be released from this. And it's January 1st. Wow, finally happened. Everton through DCL, who's finally fit again in this save, have won their first game of the season, but got 3 more bookings in the process with Roman Quintire, Abdoulaye Doucouré, and Michael Keane also going. So at least they're going to get a win this season, and it's over one of their rivals for promotion, for survival. But 3 more bookings, come on. In a remarkable turn of events, and I genuinely didn't know this, so excuse my ignorance here, that Tom Huddleston was playing at Manchester United. Wait, he's an under-21s coach / defensive midfield. Man United were getting very desperate because 36-year-old Tom Huddleston, who I honestly thought had retired, no offense Tom, has just been released for getting booking in the Premier League. I assume that must have happened like at the start of the season as like a coach or something. He's back there, but he was a player coach and he's just been Despite Manchester United continuing to get yellow cards constantly and seemingly having no defenders apparently, which is, they do have Rugani that they've just brought in and Zuma at right back, so the defence is seemingly getting better. It'll go again soon. They have just clapped Bournemouth 5-0 away from home. Definitely the biggest win of the season. I think these wins are only going to get bigger. It's also worth noting, of course, Mitrovic still playing for United, somehow has not got a booking, and I think he might actually be the top scorer in the Premier League at this point now. January is now firmly out the way. There's some mismatching in some of the fixtures currently, but Liverpool do still lead the league by 7 points now. And Man United, incredibly, seem to have got a second wind. We'll have a quick look at some of the transfers to see if there is any changes on that might have explained it. Southampton still sitting in 6th. They've had a bit of a poor month, but there's been barely any games in January, to be fair. Palace as well, looking relatively capable in there as well. Wolves seem to have joined that battle themselves. Bournemouth now starting to slide a little bit, but they're still looking comfortable for survival at this rate. It really feels like 14th down is where the relegation battle lies. And despite only winning 1 game so far this season, Everton still only find themselves 4 points from survival. But one team I do want to shout out, though, is Crystal Palace. Up in 8th spot, they're looking really capable at the moment. Still have a game in hand on some teams around them as well. They've just slowly, quietly been creeping in there, not getting a lot of yellows at all. Definitely coming back into this fight as Southampton have just wavered slightly. Mitrovic of Manchester United with 10 goals. He got 1 for Fulham and then got booked, and he's now scored 9 times for Manchester United without getting booked. Seems like he can avoid getting sent off at Old Trafford. Who'd have thought it? Again, still not over it. Because on the cards, Villa now top actually with 30 and 3 reds. Everton have managed to clean their act up. Slightly. Very, very slightly is Forest in there too. United still, though, with 29 is quite a lot. Wolves as well. Very surprising, considering 27 yellows. Actually doing a surprisingly good job. Is the other end of the league where things get very interesting as Southampton no longer top dog. Palace have crept in there and are now the best team for clean sheets, or clean shorts, I guess, in this case. So in terms of transfers, well, there's been a lot, as you can see, through the whole of January. It's the free transfers, really, that we're looking for. Although we can have a look at some of the big transfers in as well. You can see that, well, I mean, Pepe joined Liverpool for 55 million there. Spurs have been very, very busy, shelling huge amounts of money out on players to try and strengthen themselves over this period, especially. So there's that, but it's the free transfers, I think, where a lot of good players are going to be picked up in there too. Tossen's gone to Forest in there. Michael Keane also gone to Forest. Forest are clearly doing a bit of business here. Pascal Strout going to Manchester United in there. Liverpool have also picked up Emerson Royale. There's definitely some big pickups, but the thing is, they just won't last very long. We know that, and it's the second half from here on when things do absolutely ramp up. As we know from the goals one, I think it's only going to get more ridiculous from here. Liverpool do lose a couple here. They've lost Ben White and Aymeric Laporte, but they still won. Everton have won a second game, with Ellis Sims scoring the winner, although they did get hammered at home by Forest, but they've won the match. Is the Great Escape on the cards? One of the dullest games of all time here. I don't think I've ever really looked at a match and it's had like nothing in either of these boxes. No goals, no bookings, just nothing. Both teams are just afraid to do anything, apparently. Everton's survival chances just took a massive hit here with a defeat to Chelsea, which is expected, but another injury to DCL, but they also got 3 bookings, including Asmir Begovic, which means that's the second goalkeeper that Everton have lost this season. I didn't think a team would even lose 1, and the fact that they've lost 2, what are they putting in the water here? United incredibly pull off another insane away win. How the hell have they won 4-1 with an XG of 0.57? That, I guess, is the defending kind of coming into play a little bit there, as you can look at some of the ratings on the Wolves defend. There we go. I knew it was only a matter of time. He was going to get another yellow card in this, wasn't he? And it is, of course, at Old Trafford, as you would expect. But Man United win again. They are actually starting to not catch Liverpool, I don't think, but they're putting down some... They're up to second again, I think. Now Everton really have gone and done it because they've officially lost DCL as well now. He was been injured a lot, but now he's gone completely. Leeds and Newcastle as well just have had, a fight, basically. 3 yellow cards each, and all for a 1-1 draw. Luke Shaw's just been booked for Manchester City, so that's just a thing I thought I'd share with you. So the league is now shaping up like this. We've actually gone one little match day into March accidentally. Liverpool's still top, but the gap's still actually 8 points, and they have a game in hand, unfortunately. Manchester United and City still chasing. Arsenal have pulled their way in there as well. Southampton still sitting 6th, though. They've fallen massively off the pace. They just had some poor results this month. They managed to get a win over Fulham, but it just wasn't quite to be. Everton are still only 3 points from safety, despite having 2 wins this season. Bournemouth still on 5 wins. They've now not won for God knows how long, honestly, but they're still probably going to survive, even with the current points tally they've got, even if they carry on like this. And they still only lost 7 matches all season. They just love a draw. So yellow cards, Villa and Everton 37, Manchester United on 35, still well up there, but they're managing to pull it off remarkably. I think I was expecting them to maybe run away a bit more towards the top, and maybe that's what's affected it slightly. Brentford in there as well. Down at the very bottom, Southampton have kind of pulled themselves back now. It's them and Palace definitely fighting for that final spot. I think Saints will probably get it just because of points they have on the board currently. Can Everton pull off the Great Escape? I really don't think they will. And will Bournemouth finally win another game? Who knows? Alexis McAllister here getting the FM equivalent of a Gordie Howe hat-trick. He's got the penalty, the yellow card, and then the second yellow card. Man wants it all. This entire week of matches here, there was 1 yellow card over these entire games. 1 in the Chelsea game for Conor Gallagher, none in the other 3, and then nothing in the Sunday game either. It's like they're learning, and I don't know how. Imagine doing this same thing, but with the yellow card rules for the Premier League this season in real life. There'd be no one left. So it's April Fool's Day, and this is the situation. Liverpool 8 points clear at the top still, but not from Manchester United. City, Arsenal and Chelsea have all managed to leapfrog them, and Palace now become the 6th best team in the league as their battle with Spurs and Southampton continues. It's surprising. Southampton have, again, just seem to drop points in weird places, whereas Palace have got some very good results and are sort of sneaking in there now. Everton still just with those 2 wins, and unfortunately now the gap is up to 6 points because of a win for Brentford. It looks pretty bleak for them, but you never know. Bournemouth, obviously, still on 5 wins this season. Haven't won. I'm really looking forward to seeing the gap in wins in that Bournemouth team, because they seem to win a few at the start of the season and have just done nothing ever since, but still only 8 defeats. If they somehow go a full Premier League season and lose single-digit matches and come bottom half, I'll be very impressed. Haaland's still top scorer. Kai Havertz has scored 12 goals for Chelsea. You can tell we're in a simulation, can't you? Less to catch up on this time as it was a shorter break. Villa up to 39. United still sitting 3rd on that one, though. It's down the bottom, though. Palace got 1. Southampton got none over that period. They really are going to get like less than 20 this year. I'll be amazed. I was expecting a team to get sort of maybe even 50 this season, but I think only really Villa and Everton, maybe United, have got any hope of getting anywhere close to that. And I think it does seem that United's fixtures now are hotting up. They've got less players in the squad, and I think it is now starting to have an impact on them as they've gone from being the one team that could maybe challenge Liverpool to being outside of the Champions League places entirely. This is not a drill. Bournemouth have just gone and won at the Emirates against Arsenal. Ramsdale was injured in this game too, but there you go. Bournemouth finally do get their 6th win of the season. I think it's really going off the rails a little bit now. West Ham, this is a regen player, obviously. He's 15. It's just because of the Z-Gen pack. A 15-year-old has just been sent off. It must be from their brand new youth intake, but he's got to be the youngest player to join this club. And certainly get sent off in this save. So now things really have taken a little turn. Top of the league, it's actually only a 6-point gap now between Liverpool and Manchester City. Man United are now miles off the pace, but have managed to get themselves back into the top 4, as Arsenal have really fallen off. Bournemouth, on the other hand, I don't know, like they're up to 40 points now. They've actually got some really good results as well as some defeats in there, but still only 8 wins this season for them, but they have got the double-digit defeats now. Everton now, 29 points. They managed to win, I think, 3 games over the last month, but then so have Brentford and Leicester. They've all been winning matches except for Fulham. Nobody has been doing as badly as Fulham over this period. 5 points from safety with 4 matches to go, but Everton could actually survive. As for the team detail, you can see it's all kind of stagnated at the top there. Villa at 42, Everton and United also on 42. If United managed to come 3rd with 42 yellow cards in a season, I'd be pretty impressed with them. It's still Saints and Palace, Tottenham down there as well, and that thing is probably what's helped Spurs, really. I think without that, they'd be in real trouble with the likes of Saints and Palace. Liverpool actually up to 24 yellows now, and Bournemouth, 25 is not even that bad. They've just had a very weird season. So now, the run-in, Liverpool surely will wrap up the title, but the question is, can Everton survive despite having one of the worst discipline records in the league, where they've basically got no players? Bournemouth have now just casually gone and won at Manchester City. They are just putting down an insane end of a season, and don't know where this has come from. With one match day left, Liverpool have absolutely killed it in the end, 88 points. Bournemouth have pulled their way all the way up to 10th place now with their 11th win of the season. They've won like 6 of their last like 9 matches or something. They are flying. Down at the bottom, things are very tight. It's really one of Brentford, Forest, or Palace, or Everton to go down with them. Now, Fulham obviously dead in the water. They've been gone for a while, which is weird because I don't even think they've had that many yellow cards. They're just rubbish, unfortunately. But Everton could still survive with a win on the final day with things to go their way. Now, the question is, who are they actually playing? Everton on the final day are away to Fulham. Oh, okay. And Brentford, of course, will host Chelsea. There's a chance there, I tell you. And Forest, of course, are above them as well, away at Wolves. So Everton could still manage to pull off the great escape here, considering they hadn't won in their first 18 matches of the season. 7 wins in the second half under the tutelage of Wayne Rooney. You never know. Right, let's do this. Oh, God, they actually lost to them. Oh, dear. Brentford won as well. Forest did lose, but Everton managed to they managed to lose to Fulham. As Bournemouth take yet more points. Lots of yellow cards on the final day here. As Arsenal hammer Southampton there too. Liverpool just win again because they're just impervious to this, apparently. Let's get these sorted and then we'll have a look through the proper table and everything. So in the end, Liverpool win the league by 10 points. Very, very comfortable. Nobody really came near to them. Chelsea, it's just a relatively normal top 6 that you'd expect. Palace are the ones that end up getting the Conference League, purely on account of them, Spurs and Saints all losing on the final day anyway. Bournemouth's result got them very close to overtaking Newcastle, but 50 points from where they were is very surprising to me. So it was Everton with their 48 red cards. Yeah, 48 reds, that'd be a lot. 48 yellow cards. I mean, they were always going to struggle, but the fact that they even came back to where they got to, I'm very surprised. United doing as well as they did with 47 yellows is surprising. When you look at the fact that City really started to rack up the yellow cards towards the end of the season, up to 35 in the end. In the end, Palace win the race there, and I think rightly so, do get that final European spot as a result of it. But it is notably that it was Palace, Spurs, and Southampton that were the 3 teams in that race that were right down there. And Bournemouth, towards the end, actually ended up coming 17th on goals, on yellow cards conceded. So that would explain their sort of success. They really kept it tight and didn't get too many yellows over the second half of the year, and it just bailed them out. Oh my God. So, yeah, they started off appallingly, didn't win any of their first 7 matches. Then they got a win, and it sort of, didn't lose for a little while, got a few results there. But then, after December, they just went on a horrible run and didn't win another game until April. Yeah, their first Premier League win of the year came on April 5th against Arsenal. But after that, they only lost 1 of their remaining Premier League fixtures, including winning, 5 out of 6 at one point. Just absolutely clapping people to pull their way up the league. Like, you can see Nunez, Gakpo, and Salah for the Liverpool in there with Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain. But look at that defensive setup there. Reece Williams, Hayes Green, Callum Scanlon. That's where the real changes were made. But their front line was just so strong. And City still had Haaland, but they did actually suffer a little bit. They had Ødegaard in there, but they had Lawrence and Palmer. And I think that's what cost City a lot of it, was that they did lose some quite key attacking players that Liverpool just didn't. United managed to keep Rashford and Sancho, and also had Eriksen in behind, which wasn't too bad. They had Rugani, who notably wasn't playing as a striker like he was for City in the last one of these experiments. So there's that. Newcastle still had Isaac. They still had Sam Maximin and Murphy. Forest actually didn't finish too bad. They got Michael Keane in there too. They also got, I didn't know Elias Chair was even at Forest. Maybe he's not, honestly. They got Lingard, Brennan Johnson and Traore. That's probably helped them a lot. Saints keeping the likes of Adams and Orsic all season with Walcott in there. That's quite a decent team in there, even with Vokins and Stevens. The fact that Jack Stevens was able to stay the whole season was pretty impressive. Spurs still have Richarlison, Son, and Torres. The defense wasn't amazing, but it did the business. West Ham seemingly lost everybody in the defensive side of things and lost a lot up front too. Wolves never really had a lot up front, but Kalajdzic obviously was injured, no doubt there, and their defense wasn't great either. Bournemouth, I mean, Genesini, they had Mepham, they had Zabarnyi. This is a decent Premier League defense that isn't even that bad. And the front line was pretty uninterrupted either. Brooks, Christie, Hwang Hee-chan, Traore. This is not a bad team. No wonder they did so well in the second half of the season. Arsenal kept a lot of their front line in check, but they lost a lot in the defensive zone. A lot. Similar story really with Villa, though they brought some youth players through, but they still ended up with Watkins staying. Brentford seemed to lose a decent amount back there as well, and actually lost quite a lot up front. They lost Wisser, they lost, Mbuemo. Brighton apparently just lost everybody. Although that could have just been because the last match day, but their defense, they still had Solly March, although, I think they'd rather play him a bit further forward than that. Chelsea actually kept quite a strong front line too, with Pulisic, Havertz, Sterling, Broha ended up playing up front for them, but the defense definitely lacked a little bit, but the rest of the team was not bad. Palace, I mean, look at this. Edouard, Eze, like Elisa, Riedewald, that was a decent setup they've got there. The defense definitely suffered, but not as much as other ones. Everton, I mean, they had Malero in there. They had Ben Rama, actually, Townsend, but I mean, they just had nothing at the back, and I think that cost them dearly. Plus, they went down to 3 goalkeepers. Fulham, surprisingly, we actually kept Harry Wilson and Bobby Reed. And a lot of this team is still quite intact further forward, but the defence with Dibley, Diaz, Gofford, I mean, just no chance. Leeds still had, Jorginho Ruto is a good player there. Rodrigo, it's not appalling. Leicester still had Daka, Barnes, Will Alves, Tete. I'm surprised they didn't do better, actually, with that little front line they got. No defensive quality, I think, might be the issue. In terms of goals scored, I'm genuinely surprised that it's as low as that. I thought that what would happen here is because the teams had no good defenses, we'd just see constant games with loads of goal scoring. And I think that part of the problem was a lot of the service was disrupted. I'd be curious to see what the XG table actually looks like, because I feel like a lot of games seem to finish... Yeah, this is my point. I noticed that a lot of the matches, teams were creating an awful lot of XG, but not scoring their chances, which is weird because a lot of the teams still kept their best attacking players. It's like the game was trying to balance out for the fact that the teams had bad defenses in some way. It's weird that every single team this season, minus 3 teams, managed to underperform their XG, some of them by enormous amounts, but they overperformed their XG on the defensive side of things. And again, only 3 teams managed to actually be worse than expected there, which is really weird when you consider that the strike forces were the best part. I'm sure there's obviously a logical reason for this, but you'd think that with better strike forces, which is obviously the best part of every team there, was pretty much their attacks, and worse defenses, that it would be the other way round, that teams would concede more goals than expected and not this way round. And I do wonder if it's just like there's some weird balancing going on in FM because of the weirdness in the squads, that the game is trying to adjust in some way to keep things realistic. Somewhat of an interesting conclusion there. I'm slightly surprised by that, to be fair. Also, shout out to Newcastle for underperforming their goals scored by 21. That's insane. Very bizarre. I'd love to know your thoughts as to why why that might be the case. Very interesting. And I would say maybe that the chances themselves are of a lower quality, but that doesn't really matter because clearly they're not. Otherwise, they'd still be taking them because the strikers were still the best players. So strange. If you have enjoyed this, of course, drop a like. That'd be fantastic. I'm streaming, of course, so go join us over there for some more Champions League action with MTK Budapest. And yeah, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Strange conclusions there. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.